History tells us a comfortable lie. It tells us that during the Renaissance, genius belonged to men, that women watched from the shadows, that they admired art but never shaped it. And for centuries, we believed that story. But today, we are going to break it. Because there was a woman who did not wait for permission. She did not hide behind convent walls. She did not paint quietly for private amusement. She built a career. She earned money. She supported her family. And she crossed lines no woman was ever supposed to cross. Her name was Lavinia Fontana. To understand how dangerous her success was, you must first understand the world she lived in. 16th century Italy was not kind to ambitious women. Art was power. Art was reputation. Art was public visibility, and public visibility was forbidden to women. A woman painter risked her honor, her marriage prospects, and her place in society. Most families would never allow it. And yet, Lavinia Fontana did not just become an artist. She became something far more threatening, a professional. But her story does not begin with rebellion. It begins with birth. Lavinia Fontana was born in 1552 in Bologna, one of the rare cities where women could receive a basic education. Her father, Prospero Fontana, was a respected painter. But having an artist as a father did not guarantee freedom. It only meant scrutiny. Every brushstroke Lavinia made would be watched more closely than any man's. From a young age, her talent was obvious. She learned fast. She observed everything, faces, textures, status. But talent was not enough. For a woman, talent without obedience was dangerous. And this is where most stories would end. The gifted daughter forced into silence, the talent lost to marriage, the genius never tested. But Lavinia Fontana did something extraordinary. She did not disappear, she negotiated. Instead of being hidden, she positioned herself. Instead of rejecting society, she mastered its rules, and then quietly bent them. By her early 20s, Lavinia was already accepting commissions. Not secretly, publicly, people paid her for portraits. Nobles trusted her image-making skills. Families wanted to be seen through her eyes. And then she did something even more radical. She got married, and she did not stop painting. In Renaissance Italy, marriage usually ended a woman's career. For Lavinia, it became a strategy. Her husband, Gianpaolo Zappi, did not take her name. He took her profession seriously. He became her assistant. He raised the children, managed the household, prepared canvases. Lavinia worked. And this is where history becomes uncomfortable, because Lavinia Fontana did everything women were told they could not do. And she did it successfully. She painted powerful women. She painted authority. She painted intelligence. And soon, she painted what women were never allowed to see, the male nude. But that part of the story is coming. First, you need to understand this. Lavinia Fontana was not an exception. She was a warning that the rules were never about ability. They were about control. And if one woman could break them, what did that say about the system? By the end of this video, you will understand why history tried to soften her legacy, why her boldest achievements were whispered instead of celebrated, and why Lavinia Fontana was one of the most dangerous artists of the Renaissance. Stay with me, because the next chapter is where she truly crossed the line. Lavinia Fontana was born in 1552 in the city of Bologna, at a time when being born female already defined the limits of your life. But Lavinia was not born into an ordinary household. She was born into art. Her father, Prospero Fontana, was a well-known painter of the late Renaissance. His workshop was filled with pigments, canvases, unfinished faces, and the constant smell of oil and dust. This was the world Lavinia grew up in. While other girls were taught silence, obedience, and modesty, Lavinia watched hands mix color. She watched faces emerge from blank surfaces. She learned to see before she learned to speak. Yet even this privileged beginning came with invisible walls. Being the daughter of a painter did not mean freedom. It meant expectations. Every mistake would be judged more harshly, every success questioned. A talented son would be praised, a talented daughter would be monitored. Prospero Fontana recognized Lavinia's ability early. She had a sharp eye for detail, especially faces, fabrics, and expressions. But training a daughter was risky. In Renaissance Italy, a woman artist risked her reputation. Too much public exposure could damage marriage prospects. Too much independence could bring gossip, and gossip could destroy a family. So Lavinia's education was careful, controlled, measured. She learned painting at home, not in public academies. She studied composition, color, and proportion, but always under supervision. This limitation shaped her style. Unable to roam freely or study anatomy in the same way men did, Lavinia focused on what she could observe closely: faces, hands, clothing, status symbols. This is why her portraits would later feel so precise, so intimate. She learned how power is worn, how wealth is displayed, how identity is constructed. Even as a young woman, Lavinia understood something crucial. Art was not just beauty, it was communication, and she was learning the language fluently. By her teenage years, her talent was undeniable. Visitors to her father's workshop noticed her work. Friends of the family asked questions. Could she paint a likeness? Could she do a small portrait? Slowly, cautiously, Lavinia began to accept her first commissions. This was a dangerous step. A young, unmarried woman earning money through art was unusual and unsettling, but Prospero allowed it, not because society approved, but because talent demanded space. These early commissions did more than bring income. They gave Lavinia confidence. She learned how to deal with clients, how to negotiate expectations, how to balance artistic integrity with social limits. She was not just learning how to paint, she was learning how to survive as an artist. And this is where Lavinia Fontana's story diverges from nearly every other woman of her time. She did not paint in secret. She did not paint only for pleasure. She did not paint only within religious walls. She painted professionally, before marriage, before permission, before precedent. By the time she reached adulthood, Lavinia Fontana was no longer simply a talented daughter. She was a recognized painter in her own right. And this was only the beginning, because the woman who was born into art was about to test how far art could take her and how many rules it could break. For centuries, women were allowed to paint, but only in theory. In reality, painting was not considered a profession for women. It was a pastime, a decoration, something acceptable only if it remained small, quiet, and unpaid. Lavinia Fontana shattered that illusion. She did not paint for leisure, she painted for survival. And that single distinction changed everything. By the late 16th century, Lavinia Fontana had done something no woman in Europe had officially done before. She built a professional career as a painter, not as a noble amateur, not as a nun painting devotional images, but as a working artist, paid, recognized, and in demand. This was revolutionary. At a time when women were legally and socially dependent on men, earning money through art meant independence, and independence was dangerous. Lavinia accepted commissions openly. She negotiated payment. She signed contracts. These were acts usually reserved for men. Portraits became her entry point. Wealthy families wanted to be seen as cultured, refined, powerful. Lavinia understood this perfectly. Her portraits were not just likenesses, they were carefully constructed statements. Every jewel communicated wealth, every fabric signaled status, every expression suggested intelligence and control. Her sitters did not appear passive, they appeared present. This subtle power made her portraits desirable. Soon her name spread beyond Bologna, and then came the decision that would define her life. In 1577, Lavinia married Gianpaolo Zappi. For most women artists, marriage marked the end of ambition. Careers dissolved into domestic duties, but Lavinia's marriage was different. Instead of absorbing her identity, her husband reorganized his life around her work. Gianpaolo became her assistant. He managed the household. He prepared canvases. He supported her studio. Together they raised 11 children, and Lavinia kept painting. This arrangement was almost unthinkable in Renaissance society. A woman producing art, a man supporting her career. Yet it worked, and it worked well. Lavinia's income supported the family. Her reputation continued to grow. She painted aristocrats, clergy, scholars. Her studio became a place of professionalism, not novelty. She was not treated as a curiosity. She was treated as a solution. This is what truly made Lavinia Fontana radical. She did not succeed by hiding her gender. She succeeded while being visibly, undeniably a woman. And she did not soften her ambition to be acceptable. She expanded it. She painted self-portraits that declared her role as a working artist. She surrounded herself with books, instruments, and symbols of intellect. She was not asking to be included. She was demonstrating that she already belonged. But professional success brought scrutiny. Critics questioned her morality, her independence, her boundaries. The unspoken fear was simple. If one woman could do this, others might follow. And the system was not prepared for that. Still, Lavinia continued. Her career was no accident. It was strategy, discipline, and courage. She turned art into labor, labor into income, income into authority. And by doing so, she changed the definition of what a woman artist could be. Not someday, not in theory, but in practice. And once that door was opened, it could never be fully closed again. Yet Lavinia Fontana was not finished challenging the limits placed on her, because professional success was only one boundary. The next one was far more dangerous, the male nude. And when she crossed that line, art history would never be able to pretend she was harmless again. By the end of the 16th century, Lavinia Fontana had already done the unthinkable. She had built a professional career. She had supported a family through art. She had crossed boundaries no woman was meant to approach. But what came next was something even more dangerous. Recognition. Not quiet recognition, not polite praise, but official acceptance by the very institutions that had excluded women for centuries. Rome. At the time, Rome was not just a city. It was the center of power, religion, and cultural authority. To be recognized in Rome meant being recognized by history itself, and Lavinia Fontana was invited. This alone was extraordinary. Few women artists were called to Rome. Fewer still were taken seriously once they arrived. But Lavinia did not come as a curiosity. She came with reputation. Her portraits were already known for their precision, intelligence, and authority. Her name carried weight. And soon, that weight reached the highest level imaginable, the Vatican. Lavinia Fontana began working under Pope Clement VIII. This was not symbolic patronage. This was professional trust. She received commissions connected to the papal court, a space dominated entirely by male artists. To be a woman painting for the Pope was not just rare, it was unprecedented. Rome watched her closely. Every brushstroke was judged, every success questioned. But Lavinia did not retreat. She adapted. She refined her style. She balanced ambition with diplomacy. In Rome, she expanded her range. She painted religious works, altar pieces, large-scale compositions, works that required authority and confidence, and she delivered. Her success in Rome culminated in something that symbolized true acceptance. Lavinia Fontana was admitted to the Accademia di San Luca. This was one of the most prestigious art academies in Europe. Membership meant legitimacy. It meant professional equality, and it was almost entirely male. Lavinia did not enter as an exception. She entered as a peer. This moment cannot be overstated. For the first time, a woman artist was officially recognized by the institutions that defined artistic greatness. She had crossed from the margins into the center. But with recognition came pressure. Rome demanded restraint. A woman artist could be brilliant, but only within acceptable limits. Her boldest works were quietly overshadowed. Her most radical achievements softened in public memory, because Rome celebrates talent, but fears disruption. Still, Lavinia Fontana endured. She continued to paint, to work, to earn. Her presence in Rome proved something undeniable. Women were not incapable of greatness. They were simply excluded from it. Lavinia's Roman years represent the height of her career and the beginning of her historical paradox. She was famous in her lifetime, respected by the Pope, admitted to elite institutions, and yet, after her death, history would quietly reduce her. Her radical achievements would be minimized, her boldness reframed as modesty, her professional power softened into decorum. Rome had accepted her, but history would later struggle to explain her. Because a woman who succeeded, this completely disrupted too many assumptions. Lavinia Fontana proved that women did not need permission to belong at the highest levels of art, and Rome, the city of power, was forced to agree. For a moment, Lavinia Fontana did everything history said a woman could not do. She became a professional artist in a world that did not believe women could earn a living through art. She supported a family of 11 children with her own hands and her own talent. She painted powerful women, intelligent faces, and bodies that women were forbidden to study. She worked for Rome, for the Pope, for the most powerful institutions of her time. And yet, after her death in 1614, her story slowly began to fade, not because she failed, not because her work lacked importance, but because history grew uncomfortable. Lavinia Fontana did not fit the myth. She was not a tragic exception. She was proof that the system was wrong, and proof is dangerous. So history softened her. It remembered her as talented but not revolutionary, as skilled but not disruptive. Her boldest achievements were mentioned quietly. Her most radical works were discussed cautiously, because acknowledging her fully meant questioning centuries of exclusion. But her paintings never forgot. They remained. They still show women as intelligent, present, and powerful. They still show a woman artist who refused to disappear. Lavinia Fontana was not asking to be remembered as a symbol. She was simply doing her work, and sometimes that is the most radical act of all. Her story reminds us that history is not neutral. It chooses, it edits, it omits. And when we rediscover artists like Lavinia Fontana, we are not just correcting the past. We are learning how forgetting works. If this story changed the way you see history, don't let it end here. Subscribe for more forgotten artists, hidden geniuses, and stories history tried to silence. Like the video if you believe talent has no gender. Comment below, which erased artist should we uncover next? Because history is full of voices that were never meant to be silent, and we're here to bring them back.